is corporate America biting the hand that feeds them artificially cheap fiat currency and credit? So in the month of June, business television network CNBC conducted a survey of 41 chief financial officers or CFOs of some of the largest publicly traded and private companies in the world. And these chief financial officers, the majority, said that they no longer trust the Fed to control inflation. However, a lot of them also said that they don't think there's going to be a stock market crash. They think the Dow will probably go to 40,000, probably because the Fed and the US government and the US Treasury only really cares about asset price inflation and the Cantillon effect, so that the Wall Street insiders, the people who are already rich can get richer, and the US federal government can collect capital gains taxes on stock prices. And also recently you have comments from either the CEOs, so chief executive officers, or CFOs, chief financial officers, of many large corporations, whether that's Costco, the large wholesaler that sells a lot of different consumer items and food. You have food companies like General Mills. You have beverage companies like Constellation Brands. Many other companies are coming out and saying that their costs are rising very rapidly and have risen very rapidly. Their prices are going up. They're seeing higher inflation and higher costs in the global supply chain, in their different supply chains, and they're passing on higher costs and shrinkflation to their customers, and that they do not think that this is transitory. So on one hand, you have people like Janet Yellen, PhD economists at the Federal Reserve. You have Wall Street, people on Wall Street, and then PhD economists that work for some of these Wall Street firms saying that inflation is transitory, claiming that it will only go up for only a couple more months and then prices are going to crash. I've been waiting for prices to go down on many things for the last 10 or 12 years since 2009. Good luck with that one. There's been insane levels of shrinkflation that the consumer price index has not accurately accounted for well over a decade now. So you have government economists and people at the Fed, PhD economists in academia, and money managers on Wall Street, people who have to kiss the Fed's ass and cannot harshly publicly criticize them at all in public. Otherwise, they jeopardize their 6 to 8 figure per year salaries, claiming that inflation is only transitory. It's not that big a deal. Are they even noticing that their bills are going up? Do they even care? Is it even that big a deal to them if their everyday bills are going up, or they pay a little bit more for steak or their prescription medications? I guess they don't really care since so much money's coming in, or they can easily grow their income, or they're making so much off asset prices, versus what these senior executives are saying who are actually running businesses and have to make real stuff, who actually have to deal with supply chains. So Wall Street and a lot of these money managers and PhD economists do not actually manufacture anything, do not actually make real stuff, do not have to deal with input costs, do not have to manage a supply chain, do not work in the supply chain, and that's one of the main reasons why they're so divorced from reality. Also because the Fed has their back. So if they make a leverage bet, the Fed will just bail them out, if they're a hedge fund or a large bank. We are starting to see a pretty big dislocation from corporate America, which has gotten enormous subsidies from the Fed for share buybacks, artificially cheap currency and credit, to go and do share buybacks and leverage buyouts and all sorts of financial engineering and get away with it. There's non-GAAP accounting now. Generally accepted accounting principles have gone out the window a long time ago. And even they're calling the Fed out on their currency creation, the amount of money supply that the Fed has thrown in just in the last 18 months, since February and March of 2020. The money supply data is enormous compared to what the government is claiming is the real inflation rate. Unfortunately for everyday Americans, I think this means a lot worse. Stagflation is coming and shrinkflation. So you have to prepare as best you can, which means growing your income and then also buying inflation hedges, whether the government says there's more inflation or not. Finally, if you like content like this and want to help keep content like this free so it doesn't all end up behind a paywall, or you want far more in-depth content research, financial education, and analysis than I can provide in these short little free videos, there is far more in-depth researched articles behind the paywall over on my Patreon for only $5 a month. There is over 170 articles, charts, and audio podcasts that are very in-depth, exclusive for patrons, including 18 new articles out in the last 7 or so weeks on a lot of interesting topics about global macro, companies and sectors, gold mining, silver mining, precious metal royalty and streaming companies, oil companies, uranium companies, and some interesting global macro articles about why the dollar hasn't crashed yet, despite what some of these supposedly smarter and more experienced and better global macro experts than me have been predicting for years now. I think it is one of the best deals out there. I charge less than anyone else in my space for premium content, the cost of a Starbucks cup of coffee, for a month's worth of great research. And if you don't like it, you can always cancel, although I think you're really going to like it. And thank you very much to people who are patrons and have stuck with me or signed up and are still patrons. I really, really appreciate it. You don't know how much I appreciate it, because YouTube literally has tried to ruin me financially for a very long time now, and it gets harder and harder each month just to make any money at all from making these short little videos. It doesn't pay any of my bills, my patrons do. So again, thank you very, very much to my patrons for allowing me to keep making content like this. Otherwise, all of it would already end up behind a paywall already, or I would have to sell my small business sooner than expected.